Hello, I'm Rhoda and welcome to Rhoda Cards. Today I'm going to show you how to make this really pretty card with some heat embossing. I've used this beautiful stamp set and I've done this gold heat embossing on the blue, and that really shows up the gold on the blue. I just think that is so pretty. So I want to show you how I made this card. It's very simple. There's only a few pieces of cardstock that I used, and I added a little bit of twine. So let me go ahead and show you what I did. The materials that you're going to need are your card base, which I have a white card base here, and it is 4 1/4 by 11. So it's 4 1/4 by 11. And then you can score it at 5 1/2, or I just fold it in half, use my bone folder to give it a good crisp crease. So now we have a 5 1/2 by 4 1/4 base. That's called a top fold. It's a top fold. And that's our base. Now we need the mat, which is in craft, and our mat is 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. And that's going to go right on there. Now the blue cardstock is 5 1/4 by 4, and that's going to go right on top of the craft like that, with just a very tiny edge around it. Now I'm going to use a piece of paper here because I'm going to be stamping off of my cardstock with my stamp, and I want to make sure that I don't get it on my mat here, but on the paper. Now, it's good to use a anti-static pouch or embossing buddy or whatever. You can get these different places, and you use this on your paper to keep the embossing powder from going where you don't want it. So you just kind of rub this around on it, because sometimes the embossing powder will stick and get where you don't want it to get. So I'm using these beautiful flowers. Let me show you the stamp set that I'm using. This is the Happiness Never Grows Old stamp set from Close to My Heart, and it is so pretty. The flowers are just beautiful. I'm also going to be using a different stamp set for the sentiment, which is Thoughtful Flowers, and that is this stamp set. I'm going to be using the Thinking of You. As you can see, I use this stamp set a lot, so it's very well loved. So those are the stamp sets I'm going to use. So when you're doing heat embossing, you use a sticky ink. This is Versamark ink, and it's a sticky ink so that the embossing powder will stick to it. So we use our embossing ink, and you get the sticky ink on the flowers here. And what I did with mine was I did the corners. You can kind of see how the stamp is kind of curved. So what I did was I put it in the corner with the curve, and I just stamped the edge. And I just give some even pressure on there to make sure that my image is on there really good. And I can see the impression here. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but I can see it here. And then you just use some more Versamark sticky ink. And we're going to stamp the other corner. And I just kind of turn it a little bit, however you want to put it on there, and apply even pressure. Now this is a big stamp, so if you want to use like a stamping platform or something, you can, to make it a little bit easier on yourself. So that's my stamping. Now I have a piece of paper here that I folded in half, so when I put the embossing powder on my cardstock here, I can catch the embossing powder in this paper, and then I can pour it back in the jar. This is gold embossing powder. And you take your embossing powder and you just pour it over the areas where you've stamped. And it's okay if you put a lot on there, it's alright. And then you tap it off. Now I'm going to turn it sideways so that it kind of runs down on the bottom. Be careful when you're holding it that you don't touch it where the embossing powder is, because you can smear the powder. And then you just tap it off, the excess powder. Take a look at it and make sure that the powder has covered all the areas that you want it to cover. If it's missing a little spot, you can just add a little bit more powder and tap it off. Okay, I'm going to set that aside for a second. And then this powder, you can just pull together and dump it right back into your bottle. Just like that. I'm going to put the top back on it so I don't dump embossing powder all over the place. I won't tell you how I know that I can do that. Now I have a box here with aluminum foil in it, and this is what I use to heat my cardstock and melt my embossing powder. Now this is a heat tool, and you turn this on, let it warm up for a little bit, and then you will heat that powder and it will melt and you will see the shiny gold powder. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this on and let it heat up for a little bit, so just bear with me for a few minutes. I have this tin foil down in the box so it will hold the heat and kind of help it melt from the back as well as the front. And this is good so you don't have to hold it with your fingers and burn your fingers, because this heat gun gets really, really hot. So I don't want to burn my fingers, so that's why I have the box. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. It's going to be loud, so just hang with me for a few minutes. We'll let it heat up. And then we will see the magic of the embossing powder turn bright gold. It's really cool to watch that happen. You don't want to hold it on your paper too long because it will scorch your paper. Wait till it gets nice and hot, and then put it to your embossing powder and you can see where it turns bright gold. And you just kind of follow it. And watch it change color. It's like magic. It's like magic. It's so cool to watch that do that. And then you can take a look at it and make sure that everything has turned. If you see anything that's not bright, hit it with the heat gun again and heat it until it turns bright gold. So, move my box out of the way. And there's our beautiful flowers. I think that is just so pretty. All right, I use a punch to bunch this piece out, and I stamped "Thinking of You" on this piece. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp that. I used black ink, and this is Memento black ink. And I'm going to stamp "Thinking of You" right in there. Now when I stamp, I kind of twist it just a little bit and then tap. And then line it up where you want it. Firm, even pressure. You don't want to rock your stamp back and forth or up and down. Just straight down and back up again. And there's that. Okay, now we can put this together. Super easy card. We're going to take the blue and we're going to put it on the craft. I use the tape runner. You can use whatever glue you want to use. Now when I do heat embossing, when I put the adhesive on, I do all 4 sides because the paper does warp a little bit with heat embossing. And if you let your heat gun warm up a little bit before you heat your paper, it keeps the warping down a little bit. But that's why I put adhesive on all 4 sides of this to keep the warping flat once you glue it down. Now I have some twine here, and I just cut off a long piece of this, and I gave myself plenty of twine because I'm going to tie a bow, and if you don't give yourself enough, it makes it very difficult. And this is the twine that I'm using, nothing special. And then I just take this, I put it right through the middle here, like between the flowers. And then I'm just going to tie a bow here, and I kind of tied it over to the side because I'm going to put the sentiment kind of in that empty space in the middle. That way you can see the beautiful flowers. I don't want to cover up the beautiful flowers. So I just kind of put this over to the side, and I'm going to tie a bow. Sometimes tying a bow is a challenge for me. Not great at doing that. Pull the edges to make it a little bit smaller. Then I pull them out just a little bit. You can adjust how big you want your bow and the pieces, the tails. If you want to make the bows each, there's 2 here because I doubled the twine. So you can make the 2 little loops different sizes if you want by pulling one or the other of these just a little bit. And you can see that the bows a little bit different sizes there. You just adjust it however you want it. If you want the loops bigger or smaller, just adjust it. That's the size I want it. And I'm going to trim off the tails. However, if you want longer tails or shorter tails, however you want to do that. And then I'm going to go ahead and stick this on the base. That's just going to go right on the base like that. Get my adhesive back out. Now I've got the twine on the back here, so when I add my adhesive, I'm going to add it around the twine because I want to make sure this sticks, because the twine is going to pull it up off of the base a little bit. So I add some adhesive kind of on the middle of the card on either side of that twine to make sure it's going to hold down. And then we just add this right to our card base. And press down that middle part where I put the adhesive and on the sides. Now with this piece, I put foam tape on the back of it because I wanted it to pop up over over that twine. So you can use different width foam tape. There's different widths. So I'm going to kind of use this middle width. This is really narrow and this is a lot thicker. I'm going to use this one. It's kind of in the middle. And then I just take this and I put it on the back here. And I put a little bit at the top. A little bit at the top here. And a little bit at the bottom. It's going to leave like a little opening right in the middle, and that's where the twine is going to be. So it's going to set over the twine just like that. So we'll peel off the back here. And we'll put that right in there. And I wanted this kind of, the bow to kind of set over the edge of that there. So we'll put that right there. And there's our finished card. And there's the one I made previously. So I just thought that was so pretty with the heat embossing. I love those flowers. I thought those flowers were just so nice. I had to do something like this with it, and I really enjoyed that. I hope you've enjoyed that. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and the little bell will notify you every time I upload a new video. Thank you so much for joining me today. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Thank you.